I always feel like I should have some cheesy 80s backing music for the start of this. Maybe I'll bring that in March. Request in the chat, please, for our first song. Welcome, Manuel. Hey, Ollie. Okay, welcome. I think that's probably enough time to give everyone to join. There might be still a few more folks who are coming in as we join. So welcome, everybody. This is the first of 2026, but we ran about 9 of these last year. The idea of these sessions is it's a great way for IT community admins, some people from partners, both from K12 institutions and higher education, to meet up once a month, and we'll typically have a theme that we will go through. So something relevant to administrators of Google for Education. We'll share some product updates and just generally give us a chance to have a chat as a community. My name is Ollie Trussell. I'm the lead solutions engineer on the Google for Education team, looking after Europe, Middle East and Africa. I was a former teacher in my life before this, but my role is to support institutions like universities, ministries of education, schools, with the technical implementation of Google for Education. So that's Google Workspace, Gemini, and Chrome. This is a Google Meet. I'm sure you've all used this before, but please do feel free to make use of these buttons at the bottom. Keep yourself muted if there's any loud background noise, please. But this is not a one time. We haven't chosen to do like a StreamYard presentation. This is a Google Meet where we can get interactive as we go through. But just to be courteous, if you're in a loud environment, please keep yourself muted. If you want to ask a question at any point throughout today's session, please feel free to either make use of the chat. I'll keep the chat monitored and we'll be responding to questions as we go through there. But if you'd rather ask a question live in real time and you feel brave enough, feel free to raise your hand and we'll come to you as we go as well. And the chat functionality, as I think you've all found, is in the bottom right-hand corner. We have got a deep dive. So today our theme is we're focusing on something called Workspace Studio, which is a relatively new tool that we've released to all Workspace for Education editions. We're going to look at some configuration from that from an admin perspective, and then also just have a look at a few of these examples that you might find useful to use in your professional educational life, and then talk around some considerations that you may want to think about as you start rolling these out across your organization. We'll then look in some updates. So we have probably two or three months worth of updates that have come recently. I'll pick and show some of my favorites, and then generally open up to Q&A around anything that might be troubling you, around anything to do with administration of Google for Education. So let's start by delving straight into it, really. And I'm going to go through and share with you. Now, a quick thumbs up if you have had a chance yet to play with Workspace Studio, or a thumbs down if you haven't yet had a chance to play with Workspace Studio. And we'll just get a quick overview. More thumbs up than thumbs down, which is absolutely fine. So Workspace Studio is a tool that you can get to, and I'll put the link in the chat for those who might want to follow along. But you can get it at studio.workspace.google.com. And there are a number of ways in which you can use this. So there is some pre-built kind of like automation. Some of them involve Gemini. Some of them are just standard automation flows. If you're familiar with the Microsoft environment, it's somewhat similar to like Microsoft Flows that's been available there for a while. But this is obviously our flavor that works with your workspace environment. And there's obviously some Gemini interaction as well. So there's a few things that are out in there. So maybe you want to get a key notification in your chat window when you get an email from a certain person, like your boss, for example, or do some auto labeling. I love this auto adding email attachment live. which is really useful when I get like expenses and I have to then go through and claim these. These are all automatically sorted for me now in a Drive folder, and also on a spreadsheet that shows where I get this as well, which is quite useful. And as you can see, there's lots of interactions you can do with all different types of services within Google Workspace, but also automation on a time basis and using Gemini to support you. Now, the first thing I want you to consider as an admin is you have the ability to choose which of your users do or don't have access to this service. So this is available for you in your Google Workspace list. So in your admin console, you will see a dedicated Workspace Studio option here. Now, because this is a core Google Workspace service, this has been enabled by default when it's launched, but you obviously as an administrator have the option to go through and turn this on or off for all or some of your users at the organization unit or group level, however you wish. And then as with other services, when you click into one of these ones here, you've got a few other options as well. So the first one is sharing flows. So if you don't want users to be able to share flows that they create with other members of the your organization, you can turn this off. By default, this is on. And I'll talk about sharing as well later. And then webhook access is something that actually we have temporarily paused the rollout of. But when this rolls in, this will allow you to connect Workspace Studios with any kind of other API access making HTTP requests. So this is really useful if there is, let's say, a service that doesn't appear in the Workspace Studio list that you want to interact with. You'll soon be able to go through and configure these webhooks to start interaction. So as an example, one way I'm considering using this is when someone submits a post on Google Classroom, for example, you could then trigger a specific studio to go through and a flow to start from there. But this could also interact with any third-party LMS system that you might have that's API-based that can send standard webhook requests. So this will be really interesting as we start rolling out this more functionality on here as well. There is no specific over or under 18 settings for Workspace Studio, so just bear that in mind, nothing to consider from there. So let's have a look at Workspace Studio. So there are obviously all of these things that you can go through and configure, and sometimes it's nice just to maybe get a quick starter. So let's imagine if I wanted to get a daily summary of all of my unread emails, we'll look at this flow. So when you click on this, you'll see what this looks like, and it's generally pretty easy to understand. So this one is being started on a specific schedule, and so I'm choosing to start this at 8 a.m. every weekday, and I'm going to run this for a year. You currently don't have the ability to do any more granular than that, but you could obviously go through and specify never, and this would run until you stop it. And then what happens is on that schedule, it's going to go through and recap your unread emails. So this is, again, using Gemini to basically go through in the connected Workspace apps to give a summary. You don't have to bother writing the prompt for it, but it's going to go through and give you here. You could obviously filter this if you want a slightly different formatting. And then it's going to go through and give you a summary of your emails in chat. And to enable this, you simply just go ahead and press turn on. If you want to test it, you can go through and test the run here, and it's going to go through and start by looking at your emails and go through and share this. So the testing is really, really useful, and it goes through and configures on there. And now I've got a notification in my chat that I can go through and check to see what this looks like. I think I'm safe to show you this because I don't think I've got any horrendous elements on here, but this is lucky for me. In my demo account, I'm all caught up on all of my key actions, but you'll see how easy that was, and you might decide this is actually really great. Maybe I don't care about like meeting updates, and so perhaps I could go through, come back into my flow here, and I could choose to go through and maybe get rid of the themes that I want, so I could go through and customize this however I want. So if I didn't want the meeting updates, I could just go through and get rid of that option, as you see. Pretty simple to get started with and use. You also have the ability, if I go back to Workspace Studio here, is to just describe a task for Gemini. And this works fairly well. I'm going to caveat that it might need a bit of manual tweaking from you. But if you have a specific task that you want to achieve, you can play around with asking Gemini to go through that task here. So you have two options for creating these flows, actually three. So you could go and choose one of these pre-made tasks and tweak it. You could ask Gemini to go through and create a flow for you, or you could go through and create a new flow from here directly. And actually getting familiar with how these flows work is a good place to start, because it gives you an idea of like what Workspace Studios is capable of doing before you go through and ask Gemini to build a task automatically for you. So all of these flows start with a starter. And so you can go through and choose this to be on a schedule. You can customize this on specific emails, interact with your chat spaces. You can monitor Google Sheets. You can monitor Drive folders, monitor Drive files. You could have interaction with Google Calendar and meetings. If you want to do something specifically, once a Meet transcript is ready, you could go through and configure something there, and obviously links directly to form responses. Now, there are more things coming on the roadmap, such as I mentioned, the webhook interaction. But these are pretty easy to go through and configure. I could just say I'm going to go and get all emails, or I can customize and choose specific emails on here as well. Workspace Studio Flows, I think, is English only for now, but coming in other languages very, very soon. Karina, I saw that message coming through there. And then we have the option to go through and choose steps. And this is really useful just to get familiar with, like, okay, I've got my starter. What are the kind of things that I can go through and configure here as well? So I've got a few really nice kind of options. So I could actually go through and get it to do something with Gemini. And what's nice about this is I can, in my prompt, include some of the previous variables. So if I want to prompt Gemini to analyze the body of an email, I could say something like analyze the sentiment here, and it would go through, and then I could actually go through and choose to put in the email body. And then I could then use that flow to do something else. So I could then go through and maybe I want to get a notification in chat, and perhaps I just want to get a notification from the content created in Gemini. So you'll see as you go through and build out these actions, you can then use the previous iterations from those actions to go through and support you here. So hopefully that's making sense. We've got a really good Help Center article that outlines how these variables work. And I will mention that we have detailed things so you can get Gemini to make decisions for you. You can get it to do things like extract questions out of emails that need to be answered, or extract key data or values from an email if it's an expense receipt, for example. Lots of really clever things that you can go through and configure. And right now, these are the elements that you're able to interact with. Coming soon, I'm really excited, is the ability to interact with webhooks where you can just make your own third-party API requests, which will be really, really exciting. So that's a quick overview of how these work. Let's look at a few of these in action, maybe, so you can see how you might think about using this. Evil's got this, looks similar to Claude Cowork, is that correct? It's probably a good comparison summary. I think that what's really nice about this is this obviously has all the interaction directly with the workspace elements. And what's nice about this is if you are in Mail, for example, so when you're in one of these services, you actually get Workspace Studios just in your taskbar, so integrated into some of your Google Drive services, which is really useful. So worthwhile kind of considering that option on there as well. And this is available to all users. There are additional kind of access limits if you have either Education Plus or the Google AI Pro for Education. So I just want to, we'll come to those considerations a bit later, but let's go through and look at a few of these examples maybe that I can go through. So I'm going to go and give a couple of examples of how these flows might work. So I've got 3 that I want to share with you today. One is how a notification about urgent emails might look. One is a flow about a uniform reply. So this is like a uniform policy that might be important in schools in the UK. I know we have school uniform. That's not the same as everywhere else, but I'll give you a flow of how this looks. And then I'm going to go through and look at like an intelligent student triage, like a university help desk, and how you might go through and find these. So I'm going to go through and give a couple of examples for this. So I'm going to start by jumping into another email. And over here, I'm going to send an email to the student help desk. Let's imagine I'm a university student and I want to find out if it is possible to change a course mid-semester. So I'm going to go through and send that to the student help desk. So that's one example. We'll have a look at these in a moment. I'm also going to go through and send another message to the student help desk, and this one is going to be slightly different. And I'm going to ask for some anxiety support and say, I am really struggling to sleep. Is there any help I can? I'm going to go through and send that. I'm also going to send a couple of emails. So one is going to be something like this. And I'm going to send an email to my demo account here. And I'm going to say something like, and go through and send one more message about a uniform query. And so in schools in England have a strange thing where kids have to wear school uniforms. And let's go through here. I'm going to ask, is it okay for my daughter to wear tracksuit bottoms this week whilst it's cold instead of a skirt? If you're not based in England, you'll find this weird that schools force kids to wear specific clothes throughout the year. But here we are. I've got a few examples that I've just gone through and sent. And so what's going to happen is whilst I've been doing that, my flows should have been automatically getting to work. So let's review the output of some of these. So the first one I've got to show is this intelligent student triage. And so this has been configured so that when we get specific emails to the help desk, what we're going to do is get Gemini to go through and decide if the content is sensitive and requires support from a mental health specialist. If it is, then what we're going to do is we're going to send a notification to a person or a chat space to say that there is a specific issue. Whereas if it's not, what we're going to do is we're going to get Gemini to act as an employee on the help desk at the University of Amsterdam. I've got a request from this user and I've got the information from here as well. And I'm actually going to go through and get it to automatically draft a reply. And if you want, you could even go through and actually get it to go through and send this instead of just drafting the reply and actually have a fully automated flow. So the benefit of this is when I go through and show you some of these options here is, let's look at this first one. So this first one was the course change. So you'll see here that said, is it possible for me to change one of my courses in February mid-semester? And it's actually automatically gone through and drafted this. And it's looked at the University of Amsterdam resources that we've uploaded to it or specified online. And it's drafted a pretty good comprehensive reply that we can go through and configure. So that was really nice. What's also interesting is if you have this kind of student help desk middleman email, then this flow here about the anxiety support, actually, we're not going to deliver directly to the help desk team who monitor this. But instead, what we've done is over in the chat over here, I've got this intelligent student triage, and it's actually got, hey, a student's email with a sensitive issue, and then it's got a direct link to that mail. So that could be quite interesting to consider. It's just an option that shows how Workspace can do the automation and the decision flows for you, which is really useful. That was one example. If I head back to my inbox here, you'll see that I've got this cover lesson required. I said someone needs to cover Mr. Trussell's 10:30 class. If I'm someone who only looks at my emails in the morning, in the evening, I might not get to this until the end. So what's quite nice about this is I've now got this notification about urgent emails, and you'll see that it's nicely summarized this. And again, with one click, I can go and link through to that email and find out information about it. So we know that sometimes school leaders, whoever, is just going to be completely bombarded with emails throughout the day. So having a chat notification about that is a really powerful tool. And then also we've got this uniform question. Something's gone wrong here. I need to go through and check that. But in theory, what this should do, if I head back to my flow, is this is going to go through and I'll check why this isn't working. But it should be when I get an email, I've asked it to decide whether it contains a question about school uniform. It has obviously decided it's true. It's for some reason tried to extract the questions to answer and then asking Gemini. And I've actually referenced a specific flow on here as well. and for some reason, I'm not sure why that's failed, but I'll go through and do some investigation. But hopefully that makes sense of the types of things that you might go through and use within your organization. Now I've got a couple of questions. First one from Igor. Can you set up a workflow that extracts follow-up actions and tasks from meeting notes and create the task in a project management suite like Notion? Good question. So one thing you can do is when you go through to create your flows, you can configure this from based on a meeting, and you can go through and do this before a meeting. Or typically what you're going to want to do is use the starter of the meeting transcript. So let me just go through and delete this. And then you can actually get Gemini to go through and summarize or do some interaction with that meeting transcript, configure it how you want. You might want it to go through and extract action items or tasks. And so as an example here, I could go through and link to the transcripts, and I could find the action items from here. And then I could even go through and then get it to go through, create a doc or create tasks. And I could go through and choose the action items from here and then configure these tasks how I wish. So if you're a bit of playing around with it, I'd recommend exploring this, but yeah, there's certainly options from here as well. And there might even be some key follow-up items that you might want to explore. I get the pre-brief meetings, and then I've got this one here, which is already configured, send me summaries and action items immediately after meetings. So that's one that's kind of ready to go from you there as well. Oh, great question. Was there a hand up? I'm not sure if there was. Maybe it went up and then went down, but if there's any other questions, feel free to ask them. And if not, then there is a Workspace Studio. Let me just go through and share some of these. So this is the help center for Workspace Studio, and it's quite a nice kind of flow on here as well. One thing to note is you can actually manage and share your flows from here as well. So if I go back and let's imagine if I wanted to share one of these flows with other people in my organization. So perhaps I wanted this like notification about urgent emails. If I wanted to share that with other users, I can go through and change this to become accessible by anybody in my organization. And then I can just copy the link and send that to whoever they want. When they get that, they then get the option to go through and copy it. You can also view the activity on all of your flows, which is really nice. So you can see how these have been running, go and investigate specific elements about what's happening, which is really, really useful. And then there is also a few kind of issues on here. Somewhere there is information page about the limitations that you get from here, and I'm struggling to find that. But somewhere in this Help Center article, there is some information about how you get access to stuff. Typically, when you're using like Gemini intensive interactions, you may get a notification if you're in Education Fundamentals that you reach your limit, and you might need to upgrade to consider. It's just something worth thinking about as you're going through and using these on here as well. But this is a pretty nice, interesting flow that has some really nice tools and tips to how to create a flow with Gemini from a template or from scratch. So I'd recommend using that, and you can find that Help Center article up in the top right. There is also training and videos available for you and your users there. And if there is no more questions, hopefully that's useful. Workflow, I thought we made it available to under 18s. If we haven't, it's coming. I'm just going through and looking now. I will come back to you, Manuel, around whether it is already available for under 18s. It's certainly planned to be, and I think we've launched that already. But you'll need, obviously, education. And so you'll need for the Google AI ability. I believe that we've even got Gemini included in the standard fundamentals plus and teaching and learning as well. But I will go through and confirm that before the end of this session. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is jump back to over here and just share some of the recent updates that have launched over the last few months. So whilst we've been having a well-earned break over the December-January period. Let's go through and look at some of the most recent updates. One thing I will share is that we have coming soon a more comprehensive, detailed roadmap session around all the updates we shared at BET just less than a month ago in another session, and I will tell you when that is later on today. But going through this, we have got expanded access to vids features for all editions. So a read-along teleprompter, transcript-based video trimming, and styled captions are available to all editions available now, which is really, really useful. So vids is a wonderful video creation tool. We've also got proofreading with Gemini. So this is launched, which is really nice. So it goes through and actually gives you a slightly more AI-based polish of your email, suggesting better word choices, tones, and consciousness. This has been available for Google AI Pro and is now available globally, which is great. We've got student group endpoints. So this is for Google Classroom. So you might be familiar that within Google Classroom, we have this concept of student groups. We've now got an API endpoint that's available globally. So if you are automatically provisioning Google Classroom classes, you can now go through and automatically provision different groups based on, let's say, reading age, for example, or anything that you might have in your SIS or learning management system. We are adding more test styles to Gemini. So we launched the SAT test, which is obviously very North American based. We've added the JEE test now, and watch this space. We should be adding more support for curriculum based tests in more countries directly within the Gemini app coming soon. And these are available in all editions as they launch. We have also launched speech translation in Google Meet to users with the Google AI Pro for Education license. This is unbelievable, and if you've never had a chance to try it, I would strongly recommend just trialing a license of AI Pro just for a month, just to see what this is like. But basically you can converse with someone in a different language. Right now we've just got English, Spanish, Italian, and a few others coming very, very soon, but you can speak and they can hear you in your own natural language of choice, even with your own accent. It's really, really incredible. And then we've now got Gemini in Chrome, which has become available to users on Chromebook Plus devices. This is only available to users who are 18 plus, and it basically gives you a open Gemini in Chrome up in the top right of your Chrome browser, which is really, really useful. Nicholas, do you see students under 18 using Workspace Studio to manage their student work or using it to learn automation? Tough question. I would hesitate, to guess how students might use this under 18. It could be useful. I think if we're really honest, Workspace Studio is aimed more at the over 18 kind of like educator market, certainly. And we'll go from there. Abid asked a question: when Gemini in Chrome is coming to the UK? Yes, I can probably find an update on this. So let me go through and follow up before we end today. This is a big one as well, Gemini and Workspace. So we brought some of the features that were available in the Google AI Pro edition down to users with Education Plus or Teaching and Learning. So these are some features in docs, slides, forms, and vids. So the Sheets and Gmail are rolling out a bit later, but these have dropped down into some lower editions as we start bringing some of the AI Ultra functionality into AI Pro. So you'll start seeing more of this year, kind of re-slotting of which features land in which edition. This is really useful if you use Google Meet hardware, or you've got Teams hardware, whatever they call it, Teams meeting devices. But we've got full interop support between Google Meet and Microsoft Teams, which is really useful. I know we have loads of Google Meet hardware in the office, and I'll be able to join Microsoft Teams meetings with a click of a button, which is really, really useful. And then some that were launched in January, we've got some more granular control in Google Forms. So if you only want specific groups or individual users to fill out a form, you can do this now. I know this is really important for like really large. We have some whole countries on a single workspace tenant, and actually having the ability to restrict who can access and fill out the form to just a school or a university only faculty members to fill this out is a really welcome addition and change to Google Forms. We've also launched in Google Classroom the ability to record audio, video, and screen directly into announcements and assignments. So really good for giving a interactive starter to a lesson, but also giving direct student feedback, all within the classroom ecosystem, which is really useful. We've got AI mode and lens enhancements for Chrome. So this is only available if you've got Chrome Enterprise Premium, which most education users don't. But if that's something that interests you, please reach out to your Google sales contact, and they can go through here as well. We've got the ability to make event colors and labels available to everybody with make changes to events, which is really useful. So right now, when you typically would change colors on your calendar, it wouldn't reflect on other people who had access to the calendar. This could be really useful. And this I'm really excited about. So in Gemini, particularly for gems, we can now have your notebook LM sources added directly in here as well. So this gives you the ability to really quickly reference your massive notebook LMs that have got really great source control on there as well in Gemini and Gems, which is just wonderful. So the resources are already there. You can now do clever things with it. Like in Notebook LM, we hear that you can't provide ways to structure the output for users using it. But now you can take a Notebook LM full of sources, create a gem that's going to give a structured output, and then share the gem with other users, which is really cool. We've got easier kind of like suggested time functionality on Gemini. So this will go through and give you some better suggestions of when people might like it. And it has this like color coordinated, like green, everyone's free. But then it also gives you some of these like yellow options where someone's got like a DNS, but they might actually be free. And someone's got some other things. So it allows you to make a more informed choice if people have like big blocks on their calendar, which is quite useful. We've got new admin controls for Take Notes for Me in Google Meet. So these are like default sharing access and where the host may override this in a meeting, which is quite useful. And these are the styled captions that have been made available to everybody. So it actually follows along with your voice and highlights the word as you speak it. So really nice, easy to follow on for really polished looking videos. We've also added Google Meet usage metrics in the Gemini reports dashboard. There's some more functionality coming later this month to the Gemini reporting, particularly for those users who might be at usage limits, and you'll be able to more clearly see that. We'll share more about that in the next community meetup as that launches. We've also got the ability to forward messages to other chats or groups. So right now you've had the ability to forward it to your inbox, but we've allowed the ability to forward chat messages from one group to another. Which sounds small, but it's actually really, really powerful if you're a heavy chat user. If you've got Google Meet hardware, you can do a force reboot when it's idle for a while, which is nice. And now secondary calendars, we made some changes. I definitely recommend you having a look at a recent MSA that we sent out to the primary admin of your workspace environment around secondary calendars. So secondary calendars will now more closely align to an owner rather than just being generically loosely owned. And so there are some implications for that. There's some improvements by doing that. It has some automated lifecycle management, but there's some things that you as an admin might need to consider if you have got a secondary calendar that was created by somebody who left your organization a long time ago. Will have done some automatic assigning of that to an individual user. So it will still continue to be used, but going forward, secondary calendars will be linked to users. And so it's just one thing to consider as you like offboard or delete users. There's the potential to also delete secondary calendars that might be in use. So there are some pros for that you're not going to have all of these abstract calendars that are used and unmanaged, but there are some implications. So please do review the content of that MSA that we sent earlier last month. And if anyone's got any questions, we can delve into that as well. We've already launched this, Gemini in Chromebook Plus. This is a really cool feature that we've launched in Class Tools. So Class Tools is something that I think everybody in this call might know about, but it's basically the ability to take over and manage student devices from a teacher device. Initially, it launched as a K12 feature for secondary and primary schools, but actually we've had a few universities who've done some really great pilots for this on exam-based configuration. So instead of having to rely on the university administrator to configure the devices in a single app kiosk mode, class tools has made it really easy in like computer lab suites to easily and securely deliver exams where they just have an LMS page and a few other websites or whatever it might need to be that is pre-configured. But we've now got this new feature where there is a specific kiosk app that you can deploy. So if you've got like perhaps an old Chrome device or a Chrome bit, you can actually have that deployed with a kiosk class tools app, which basically turns it into like a remote presenting device, which then a teacher can open up, enter the code, and then wirelessly mirror their device from anywhere in the room to what's on the front. So this is a really nice alternative to tools that we've had in the past, like Cast Moderator, significantly easier to go through and manage. And we've got a really nice support article for that on how to get set up. So I'd recommend exploring that if that's useful. And then going back to 2025, there was a few other features that we had on here as well. We launched customized data tables as a source and output in Notebook-LM, which is really, really useful when you've got heaps of unstructured data. You can get them mapped into a really nice structured table that you can then export into a Google Sheet. We launched Gemini image generation to Workspace users of all age, including under 18, which is really useful. We've got Gemini 3 Flash for the app, which is really useful. So really quick for like interactions available there as well. We added AI avatars in Google Vids, so the ability to take your script and get an AI avatar going through and talking through your presentation. We've also got this, which is a welcome feature for many users. It used to be that you could only share the audio when you're presenting a tab, but you can now choose to toggle the audio when you're presenting an entire desktop, which is sometimes useful if you want to share something that isn't on a Chrome browser, as an example. I know Abby's excited about that, which is cool. And then we've got better stereo support in Google Meet, which is really useful. And then this is really useful if you do big kind of like live streaming within your organization. So think about a university, perhaps, who might want to do like live streaming on Google Meet. We've now got some ECDN optimization where you can actually go through and get these tests automatically configured for you in the admin console when you get information around like the bandwidth, peering configurations. And so it's a really nice way to configure these to prevent your overall bandwidth being used and configure peering configurations a bit more accurately. So we launched that as well. Google Vids is available in the Chrome OS launcher for users, and that became available in December. And then there is also the ability to add headers or footer messages within DLP. So when you've got DLP Gemini rules, you can actually go through and now, in addition to like applying labels, you can actually add a footer or a header message to give some information about this being sensitive information. Please don't share or whatever you might need to as well. And now we've added multi-party approvals. Is something that we launched early last year, and it's the ability for you to have to go through and require a secondary administrator to approve an action. There were some really useful things, like obviously deleting the domain as a key one, but we've now added Google Vault as an option there as well. So we've heard from loads of customers that having access to Google Vault, a rogue admin could go through and investigate Drive or mail content. And whilst it's logged, we don't really want to just allow it and then have to reactively alert to it. So now with multi-party approvals, you can go through and add that on there as well, which is really, really powerful. We've got the ability to invite external guests to meet live streams, which is really useful. So I know historically when you've wanted to do like external events for people without Google accounts, you've had to use third-party tools like StreamYard, but we now allow Google Meet to make that really easy as well. And you can also limit access for internal live streaming. So if you wanted to have a live stream that only faculty members in a university get access, you can now do that really easily as well. Picture-in-picture in Google Meet. I think probably everyone is on this, but this is just something that's automatically launched. Google Workspace Studio is what we've just been through. And I think my presentation has frozen, which is handy. Like 3 videos, there you go. And then we've got Drive Insights in Gemini, which has launched AI Pro for Education. To get a really nice kind of folder highlights of what's been happening. Closed captions in Cantonese, which could be useful for some of you. We've got some of these public notebooks, which are things that we worked on with third-party organizations. We can now add these into Classroom, which is really, really useful. And that is it. So let's open up to some more Q&As, if that's all right. Kim has mentioned that people have reported issues with Notebook-LM in Gemini. The source added fine, but Gemini isn't actually using the content. Cool. Kim, that's a really good bit of feedback. If you have specifics, just remember to give some feedback directly within the Gemini tool. There are what's called debug logs available to you. So let me just go through and open up Gemini and show you some good ways to give feedback to us. And so when you go through, let me just find something like this. So reporting legal issues sounds like a really scary way to do stuff, but that is one way where you can go through and give some feedback on here as well. We've also got the option, I'm trying to find the debug option on here as well, which we've just launched. I'll tell you what, Kim, I'll follow up with the best way to give some feedback, because we've just changed. There used to be an entire debugging option that you could access from in here that we have got rid of for some reason. And I will go through and share what to do there as well. Kim's also asked, would be nice if calendar color labels also worked for secondary calendars. The color shows, but there is no way to set a label. Okay, good point. Let me go through and check whether that is part of the feedback, and I will follow up directly with you, Kim, afterwards. Saurabh, you have Google for non-profit. Are these features available for us? It depends what version of non-profit you have. So if it's a non-profit enterprise edition, some of these features will be available. If you are a valid education institution, then you should certainly apply for Google for Education fundamentals. But if not, there are really good support articles where you can compare Workspace editions. And from here, you can go through and have a look at all the different options. And so worth having a look at the non-profit availability. And I don't know, without knowing you, what your non-profit version is, but there is like enterprise discount for non-profits, etc. But we're typically focused on education around this team, unfortunately. Gemini note-taking on Meet is great. Will that be available for all? So that will be coming to the Education Plus editions eventually. Right now, it's currently on the Google AI Pro. So good question from Gareth. And what I'll do is, whilst these questions keep coming in, I'll just quickly share about some of the upcoming sessions. So next week, February the 26th is Thursday at 10 a.m. GMT. So the same time next Thursday, we've got a deeper dive into the BET 2026 announcements. And that evening of the Tuesday next week, we've got Staying Current in an Evolving AI Landscape. And so you'll find out all of these features in the same way you found this on the Education on Air page. So please do register for those if you think they might be useful. And I've got another comment or question from Greg. Apologies if this is a bit off topic for this specific chat, but I discovered yesterday that Google officially acquired Cameo to bridge the gap for those stubborn legacy Windows apps. It's a total hidden gem for UK education because it lets us stream apps like Sims or local finance software directly to Chromebooks. So Cameo, you have correctly identified, was a company that Google purchased a few years ago, and we've been bringing all the systems in-house to Google, so it's taken a while for us to launch that. It's now generally available. Worth noting, right now we don't have dedicated education pricing. We also don't have support for under 18s, but it sounds like for some of your situations that might be fine. The way that Cameo works is, to start with, it is a self-hosted option. So you can install the Cameo client on your own local server or on a cloud server of your choice. Coming soon, we'll have a fully hosted Google option where we'll have like a standard array of apps like Microsoft Windows local apps available on there as well. But for now, you'll need to locally host it. Sims is a tough one because it obviously requires access to like local SQL databases and some authentication on there as well. It's actually relatively hard to virtualize Sims specifically as a standalone application. But for things like finance software, it could be a really good option that you go through and consider. As I said, we don't have necessarily that education pricing, so it might be a little bit more expensive than what you might be looking to pay to start with. But you can find out more about this. I'll put the link in the support article here, as you can go through and find a bit about this. And it goes through and outlines how you go through and configure this option on here as well. So it is licensed on a per user basis. So every user who needs a license to access, you need to pay for. And then we've got some payment options on here as well. I think the pricing, I'll have to come back to you, but I think it's somewhere between starting at like $140 per user per year. And there are volume discounts. So just bear that in mind as you're considering it, Greg. If you would like to find out more about it, please contact your local Google representative and they can talk you through some of those options. Right, and there's a few questions about availability, and let me go through and find out what languages and availability we have on here as well. If there's any other questions, keep them coming in. But I'm going to go through and look up launch pages for when we are adding additional languages to here. There were some other questions I think that came in. And Workspace Studio for 18 plus as well. Let me go through and double check that. Should definitely get some elevator lift music for now as well. Ding, ding, ding. So I think we should roll it out to all users for Workspace Studio. Hopefully by the end of this quarter. So we're currently on like a rapid release. It should be available to most folks by now, but if you're not on a rapid release, it should be available to everyone, regardless of your country or location. So if you don't have it now, it's not that you're doing anything wrong or live in a country that Google isn't rolling it out to. It's just that we are doing a slow rollout on this one here as well. And then from a language perspective, I will find out more. It will launch initially in English, and then the following languages will slowly roll out over the next 8 or so weeks. So Korean, Japanese, Italian, French, German, Spanish, and Brazilian Portuguese. So if you're in one of those lucky languages, it will roll fast into those languages there. Swedish is not on that list yet, but typically we have those as fast follows for everyone from there as well. So hopefully that answers some of the questions. So Vinray, it will be available soon, but in English only, or one of those other languages for you to choose from to start with. One thing to note with is obviously the UI will be in English, but when you go through and want to interact with Gemini, for example, any prompts that you put in there can be in any language of your choice. And Gemini will interact with that, no problem. Any other questions? Great. So we've obviously got these education on there. So this is the K12 page, which everyone found out from here as well. We'd recommend, so there's technical tips about staying current. This is dedicated for IT admins. I'd strongly recommend. It might be a bit late for you, but these can obviously be recorded and you can watch out, follow up on these afterwards, which is really useful. And then my colleagues Anu and Simon are giving us the latest bet announcements this time next week. So do tune into that for a deeper dive into some of these tools. And then we've got some specific Gemini training a bit later next month. And then I should also have an IT community meetup in March as well. And for some reason that is not on there yet, but I will give all of you the date for that now. So you can at least add it to your calendars. I believe it's March the 26th. Let me just go through and confirm that. Maybe the 19th. At some point, we'll work out where this is, but there will be another one of these once every month. It's usually the last Thursday of every month. So we're likely to go for the 26th of March, but watch this space. It is the 26th of March, definitely. For some reason, it's not on the event yet. So 26th of March will be the next one. The link to this one, this is the K12 version, and I will share the higher ed version, which has some slightly different editions. There is also a Spanish and Italian versions of all of these. And we have this one for higher education. And so we've got some of these functionality, and there are some slightly different tracks for higher ed to K12, and it might be worth exploring some of these different ones. So please do sign up for those that interest you. And even if you are a CIO, we've also got like faculty and staff, so slightly different sessions available for you, which might be useful. And likewise on the K12 track, we've got education leader ones, which might be useful for you, and also educator ones. So slightly more classroom specific. Hamza, yes, these sessions are always recorded, so you'll be able to follow up with these. You'll see that on the website, these are live, but shortly after this session, we'll upload this video for you to recap, along with the slides that I presented, which is really useful. And great, for anyone in the UK, I might see you at the IT Admin Summit next Friday. So Abid, I'll see you there. But everyone else, if I don't see you, I'll see you all next month, 26th of March, if not before. Don't talk about the weekend yet, Deirdre. It's only Thursday. Coming soon, though. Have a great one, folks. Thanks for joining. Oh, and I've been a terrible person. I should also ask you to fill out a feedback form as well. As you go, if you get a chance, help me keep my job. But thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day.